My wife, who just graduated from law school I paid for, publicly embarrassed me at her graduation party just because I asked to take a picture with her. She smirked and said, "I don't take pictures with our lives." A few minutes later, I placed a call to the law board committee, and the whole party came to a standstill. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm some kind of victim, all right? My name's Marcus Hale, I'm 38 years old, and apparently my biggest crime in this life is believing that love and potential could coexist in the same zip code. Spoiler alert, they can't, and I've got the emotional scars and bank statements to prove it. When I met Claire Richardson 5 years ago, she was what you'd call financially challenged, which is just a fancy way of saying broke as hell. We're talking second-year law student living in a studio apartment that was literally smaller than most people's walk-in closets, surviving on a steady diet of instant ramen, questionable leftovers, and the kind of hope that only comes from someone who's never actually paid their own bills. You know the type. Big dreams, empty wallet, and a smile that could convince you to mortgage your future for their present. And me? Well, I was the guy everyone back home called boring but reliable. You know what that means in real-life translation? It means I was the sucker with a stable income and a savior complex the size of Texas. While all my buddies were out there living their best lives, traveling, partying, actually enjoying their 20s and early 30s, I was grinding like my life depended on it. And honestly, someone's life did depend on it, just not mine. I worked 3 jobs back then, and I'm not exaggerating for dramatic effect here. Monday through Friday, I was pulling double duty as an IT consultant for some corporate hellhole where everyone used Synergy, unironically, and thought casual Friday meant wearing jeans with your suit jacket. Nights and weekends? I was slinging drinks at this upscale cocktail bar downtown, listening to finance bros brag about their crypto portfolios while their dates pretended to be impressed. And then, just to really spice things up, I drove for Uber whenever I had a spare 4 hours, basically becoming a part-time therapist for drunk people and a mobile philosophical discussion leader for insomniacs who wanted to debate whether hot dogs were sandwiches at 2 in the morning. You might be wondering why anyone would voluntarily sign up for this kind of punishment. Well, here's the thing. I thought we were building something together. I genuinely believed that Claire and I were a team, that every tuition payment I made, every textbook I bought, every late-night study session I supported by bringing her coffee and encouragement was an investment in our future. Plural. Our future. 4 or 5 solid years. I was her personal ATM, life coach, and cheerleading squad all rolled into one exhausted package. I paid her tuition every semester. And let me tell you, law school isn't cheap. We're talking the kind of money that makes you wonder if they're printing the diplomas on actual gold leaf. I bought her books, those massive, unnecessary legal textbooks that cost more than my first car and somehow weigh approximately as much as a baby elephant. I even ironed her courtroom blazers. People, do you know how many blazers a law student needs? Too many. The answer is too many. Every time I felt that little voice in the back of my head asking if maybe, just maybe, I was being taken advantage of, Claire would look at me with those eyes and say something like, "Babe, we'll celebrate when I pass the bar. All of this is going to be worth it. You'll see. We're going to make it together." And like an idiot, a well-intentioned, hopelessly romantic idiot, I believed her. I believed every word. I thought I was building a partnership, a marriage, a life with someone who would eventually stand beside me as an equal. I pictured us 10 years down the line, sitting on our porch, laughing about the ramen days and the struggle and how we made it through together. I imagined her successful law career balanced perfectly with my tech business. Both of us finally comfortable, finally able to breathe without checking our bank accounts every 5 minutes. Turns out, I wasn't the partner in this equation. I was the investor. And not even the kind of investor who gets their name on the building or equity in the company. Nah, I was more like the silent partner who funds everything, takes all the risk, and gets absolutely nothing when the business goes public. I was the venture capitalist who got cut out of the deal right before the IPO. The angel investor who learned that angel was just code for sucker with cash. Claire used to tell her law school friends that she was self-made, which is technically true if you completely ignore the definition of self and made. She'd post those inspirational quotes on Instagram about strong women who did it all on their own, complete with candid study photos that I took in the apartment that I paid for, using the laptop that I bought. The cognitive dissonance was truly impressive. But here's what really gets me. I wasn't even asking for credit. I didn't need a parade or a medal or my name in her graduation program. I just wanted to be seen. I wanted to be acknowledged as something more than the boring, reliable guy who kept the lights on while she chased her dreams. I wanted her to look at me the way she looked at her future career, with excitement, with possibility, with the kind of respect you give to things that actually matter. She used to say, "We'll celebrate when I pass the bar, babe." And you know what? She was right. We did celebrate. Well, she celebrated. I just showed up, delivered some flowers, and learned what the view looks like from rock bottom. Because here's the punchline I didn't see coming. I didn't realize I'd be the joke at the celebration. I thought I was the supporting character who'd finally get their moment in the spotlight. Maybe a thank you speech or at least a genuine smile across a crowded room. Instead, I became the punchline in a story about a woman who made it despite her circumstances. And those circumstances had a name, a face, and 3 jobs that left him too tired to notice he was being written out of the narrative in real time. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The way she stopped asking about my day. The way we slowly became I in all her sentences. The way she'd correct people who assumed I was a lawyer too. Always making sure everyone knew I was just in tech, with that little dismissive laugh that made it sound like I spent my days playing video games instead of building actual software that actual companies actually used. But back then I was too busy being the dependable one, the reliable one, the boring one who showed up and did the work and loved someone who had already moved on without bothering to mention it. So yeah, that's me. Marcus Hale, 38 years old, believer in potential, investor in dreams, and the guy who learned the hard way that love and gratitude don't always come as a package deal. Some lessons cost you money. This one cost me 5 years and every ounce of self-respect I'd managed to save up. But don't worry, the story gets better, or worse, depending on whose side you're on. And something tells me you're not going to be on Claire's side for much longer. So here's where things get really fun. And by fun, I mean soul-crushingly humiliating in a way that'll probably require years of therapy to fully unpack. Claire's graduation party was scheduled for a Saturday night at this ridiculously fancy rooftop lounge downtown called The Elevation. Yeah, that was actually the name. The Elevation. Because nothing says, "I've made it," quite like a pretentious venue name that sounds like a motivational seminar. This place was the kind of spot where everything costs 3 times what it should and comes in portions small enough to fit on a coaster. We're talking string lights everywhere that probably cost more than my monthly rent, overpriced sushi that had been sitting under heat lamps just long enough to question its freshness, and a jazz band that seemed to think every musical mistake they made was actually an intentional artistic choice. You know the type. They'd hit a wrong note and then nod at each other like, yes, that dissonance really captures the existential dread of modern capitalism. The place was packed with Claire's law school crowd. And let me tell you, if you've never been surrounded by 100 newly minted lawyers who are all convinced they're the next Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you haven't truly experienced the full spectrum of human insufferability. Everyone was dressed to the nines, holding champagne flutes like they were props in a movie about successful people, talking way too loud about justice and ethics, and how to bill clients for a 6-minute phone call without blinking. The energy in that room was equal parts celebration and Shark Tank, like everyone was simultaneously congratulating each other and sizing up the competition. I showed up wearing my best navy blazer, and okay, full disclosure, it was the same one from our wedding 4 years ago, but who's really counting? It still fit, it was still in decent shape, and honestly, when you've spent the last 5 years funneling every spare dollar into someone else's education, you don't exactly have a lot left over for updating your wardrobe. I'd even gotten it dry cleaned for the occasion, which felt like a big deal at the time. I wanted to look good. I wanted to look like I belonged there, standing next to my successful wife at her moment of triumph. In my hands, I carried a bouquet of stargazer lilies, Claire's favorite flowers, or at least they used to be back when she still told me personal things about herself. I'd special ordered them from this boutique florist across town, the kind of place where they wrap everything in that fancy paper and tie it with silk ribbons. Cost me $80, which probably sounds ridiculous for flowers that'll be dead in a week, but I wanted the gesture to be perfect. I wanted her to see me walk in with those lilies and remember that I knew her, that I paid attention, that I cared about the details. You'd think that kind of effort would earn me at least a smile, right? Maybe a kiss on the cheek? Thank you for coming, babe. Hell, at this point I would have settled for basic eye contact and a nod of acknowledgement. Wrong. So incredibly, painfully wrong. When I finally spotted Claire across the room, she was holding court at this big center table, surrounded by her law school friends like she was some kind of legal royalty. And maybe she was, in their world. She looked amazing, I'll give her that, wearing this gorgeous black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my car payment, hair done up in some complicated style that required a professional, makeup perfect. She was glowing with that particular kind of confidence that comes from finally achieving something you've worked your ass off for. Except, she didn't work her ass off alone, but apparently we were conveniently forgetting that part. Her crew was laughing at something she'd said, probably some inside joke about their contracts professor or a case study I wouldn't understand because I was just the IT guy who paid the bills. They all had that same energy, young, ambitious, ready to take on the world and bill it at $300 an hour. Every single one of them looked like they'd stepped out of a legal drama TV show, all sharp angles and sharper ambitions. I took a deep breath, straightened my blazer. The wedding blazer, the only good blazer I owned, and walked over with my bouquet of expensive lilies, feeling simultaneously proud of her and nervous about my place in this new world she'd entered. The closer I got, the more I could hear their conversation. Something about a firm downtown that was recruiting, starting salaries in the six figures, partnership tracks, corner offices. All the things that mattered to them. All the things that apparently mattered to Claire now. Hey, honey, I said, trying to sound casual and confident as I approached the table. My voice came out a little too loud, trying to be heard over the jazz band's enthusiastic butchering of Take 5. Can we take a picture together? You look amazing. It was such a simple request. Such a normal, reasonable thing to ask at your wife's graduation party. A picture. Evidence that we'd been there together, that this achievement belonged to both of us in some small way. Maybe something to post on social media, to show my mom, to frame on our wall alongside all the other milestone moments. Claire turned to look at me, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Annoyance, maybe? Embarrassment? It was gone so fast I almost thought I'd imagined it. Then she smirked, not smiled, smirked, in this way that made my stomach drop before my brain even processed what was about to happen. And then she said it, loud enough for the whole table to hear, loud enough that the conversations around us started to fade, loud enough that I'll probably hear it echoing in my nightmares for the rest of my natural life. I don't take pictures with low lives. The words just hung there in the air between us, like smoke from a gun that had just gone off. For a moment, time did that thing it does in movies where everything slows down and gets really quiet. The jazz band hit what I'm pretty sure was an actual wrong note this time, not an artistic one. The conversations at nearby tables stuttered and stopped. Someone, I think it was her friend Tara, the one who always looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her designer's shoe, literally choked on a piece of shrimp tempura, coughing into her napkin while her eyes went wide. I just stood there, holding my $80 bouquet of stargazer lilies, wearing my wedding blazer, blinking like someone had just slapped me across the face with a law textbook. Did my wife, the woman I'd sacrificed everything for, the woman whose entire career I'd funded, just call me a lowlife? In front of all her friends? At her graduation party? The party I'd probably indirectly paid for through 5 years of tuition payments? Yeah, she did. The table had gone completely silent now. Everyone was looking at me, then at Claire, then back at me, like they were watching a tennis match but couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. A guy in a pinstripe suit, probably some trust fund kid who'd never worked a real job in his life, whispered "oof" under his breath. Someone else cleared their throat awkwardly. Tara had stopped choking and was now staring at her champagne glass like it held the secrets of the universe. And Claire? Claire just sat there with that smirk on her face, surrounded by her new friends in her new world, looking at me like I was an inconvenience she couldn't wait to get rid of. Like I was some random dude who'd wandered in off the street instead of the husband who'd made this entire moment possible. That's when I realized something important, something fundamental, something that would change everything that came next. I wasn't her partner. I wasn't even her past. I was her embarrassment, her secret shame, the part of her origin story she wanted to edit out before anyone important read it. Well, that was about to change. You know that moment in a sitcom where someone says something absolutely devastating and there's this uncomfortable pause before the laugh track kicks in? Yeah, this was that moment, except there was no laugh track, no commercial break to give everyone time to process, and absolutely no script telling me what my next line should be. This was real life, happening in real time, and I was standing there like an idiot with flowers that suddenly felt like they weighed about 700 pounds. The moment just hung there in the air between us, thick and awkward, like a bad Wi-Fi signal that keeps cutting out right when you're trying to stream something important. Everyone at that table was frozen, mid-sip, mid-bite, mid-breath. You could literally see people trying to figure out what the appropriate reaction was. Do we laugh? Do we pretend we didn't hear it? Do we check our phones and act like we're suddenly very interested in an urgent email? The social anxiety in the air was so thick you could have cut it with one of those overpriced sushi knives. Tara, Claire's best friend, the one who'd been choking on shrimp tempura like karma was trying to send her a message, let out this weird little giggle into her champagne glass. You know the kind, that nervous laugh people do when they're not sure if something's supposed to be funny but they want to be on the winning team anyway? It came out all bubbly and uncertain, like even she wasn't committed to it. The dude in the pinstripe suit, Mr. Oof, himself, leaned over to the guy next to him and whispered something while trying really hard not to look at me. Even the jazz band, God bless them, hit another legitimately wrong note, like the universe itself was cringing so hard it affected their ability to play instruments. I just stood there for what felt like 17 years, but was probably only about 5 seconds, still holding those damn lilies, still wearing my wedding blazer, still trying to process the fact that my wife had just called me a lowlife in front of her entire graduating class. My brain was doing that thing where it runs through about 50 different response options in rapid succession. Walk away, cry, throw the flowers, make a scene, pretend I didn't hear it, laugh it off, set something on fire, and then something weird happened, something I didn't expect. I smiled. Not because it was funny. Oh hell no, nothing about this was funny. Not because I was okay with what just happened, because I definitely wasn't. I smiled because when life hands you humiliation on a silver platter at a rooftop party full of lawyers who think they're hot shit, you might as well order dessert and make everyone else uncomfortable too. When you're already at rock bottom, you've got nothing left to lose, and that's a surprisingly liberating feeling. So I smiled. A real smile. The kind of smile that probably looked a little unhinged if I'm being honest, like I'd just figured out the punchline to a joke that nobody else had heard yet. Lowlife, I said, nodding slowly like I was really considering the accusation, rolling it around in my head to see if it fit. My voice came out surprisingly steady, surprisingly calm, which seemed to throw Claire off because her smirk faltered just a little bit. You're right, sweetheart. You're absolutely right. I mean, I only paid for your degree, your rent, your car, your bar prep course, and those emotional therapy sessions you needed after finals when you had that breakdown about contracts too. So yeah, technically, I'm pretty broke now. Guilty as charged. The table went dead silent. Like, morgue silent. Library silent. Holding your breath underwater silent. Someone's fork clattered against their plate, and it sounded like a gunshot in the sudden quiet. Tara's giggle died in her throat, so fast I'm pretty sure she choked on it a little. Pinstripe suit guy's eyes went wide, and he suddenly found his sushi extremely interesting, staring at it like it might tell him how to escape this situation. A few people at the surrounding tables, people who'd been eavesdropping because let's be real, everyone was eavesdropping, let out these nervous laughs. The awkward kind. The kind where you're not sure if you're laughing at the joke or at the absolute carnage unfolding in front of you. It was the social equivalent of watching a car crash in slow motion. You know you shouldn't look, but you absolutely cannot look away. Claire's face did this interesting thing where it went from smug to surprised to angry in about 2 seconds flat. Her jaw tightened, and I could see her doing that thing she always did when she was pissed. This little muscle in her cheek would twitch. She set down her champagne glass with just a little too much force, and some of it sloshed over the rim onto the white tablecloth. "Marcus," she said, and her voice had that warning tone that I'd heard 1,000 times before. That tone that said I was about to cross a line, that I needed to back down, that I was embarrassing her. "Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene. That's rich. That's absolutely beautiful. She calls me a lowlife in front of 50 people, humiliates me at her graduation party that I essentially funded, and I'm the one making a scene? The audacity was truly impressive. If they gave out degrees in gaslighting, Claire would have graduated summa cum laude. I laughed. I actually laughed, and it came out sounding maybe a little bit crazy, but you know what? I'd earned a little bit of crazy. I'd paid for it, literally, over 5 years of sacrifice. Make a scene, I repeated, still smiling that smile that probably looked like it belonged on someone who'd just snapped. Honey, I'm not making a scene. I am the scene. I'm the whole damn production. I'm the opening act, the main event, and the encore. Hell, I sold the tickets and ran the concession stand. A couple of people actually snorted into their drinks at that one. I saw a guy at the next table over. Some older dude who was probably a professor, crack a smile and try to hide it behind his hand. Even one of the jazz band members, the guy on the saxophone, looked over and raised his eyebrows like he was impressed. Claire stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor with this horrible screeching sound that made everyone wince. She grabbed my arm, not gently, and tried to pull me away from the table, away from her friends, away from the audience she'd just performed for. Can we talk? She hissed through clenched teeth, still trying to smile for her friends like everything was fine. Like this was just a little misunderstanding between a happy couple. Privately, I looked down at her hand on my arm, then at her face, then at all the people watching us. Every single person at that table was pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. Tara had her phone out now, probably texting the group chat. Pinstripe Suit was whispering to his buddy again. A girl I didn't recognize had her mouth literally hanging open. Sure, I said pleasantly. Let's talk. But first, let me get this straight. You don't want to take a picture with me because I'm a lowlife, but you do want to talk to me privately? Interesting choice. Very lawyer of you. Only acknowledge the help when nobody's watching, right? Her grip on my arm tightened, and I could see her doing that thing where she was counting to 10 in her head, trying not to lose her cool in front of everyone who mattered to her new career. Because that's what this was really about, wasn't it? Image. Optics. Making sure everyone at this party saw her as the self-made success story, not the woman whose husband worked 3 jobs to put her through school. You're being ridiculous, she said quietly, but loud enough that the people closest to us could still hear. You're embarrassing yourself. And that's when it hit me. The real punchline. The thing that made all of this suddenly crystal clear. She genuinely believed that. She actually, honestly thought that I was the one who should be embarrassed. That calling out her behavior, naming the reality of our situation, pointing out the 5 years of sacrifice I'd made, that was somehow more shameful than what she'd just done. The cognitive dissonance was absolutely stunning. It was like watching someone set a house on fire and then blame the smoke alarm for making too much noise. I gently pulled my arm out of her grip and took a step back. The lilies were still in my other hand, and I looked at them for a second. $80, special ordered, her favorite flowers. What a waste. You know what? I said, and my voice came out tired suddenly. Not angry, not hurt, just exhausted. You're right. I am making a scene, and it's been a long time coming. I set the flowers down on her table, right in the middle of all the champagne glasses and expensive sushi. They looked ridiculous there, too pretty for the moment, too sincere for the company. Enjoy your party, I said. Enjoy your new life. Enjoy everything you worked so hard for. The sarcasm in that last sentence could have cut glass. And then I did something I should have done a long time ago. I turned around and walked toward the bar, leaving her standing there with her mouth open and her friends suddenly very interested in their phones. As I walked away from that table, from Claire, from her smirking friends, from the whole toxic circus, the memories started flooding back. You know how they say your life flashes before your eyes when you're dying? Well, apparently the same thing happens when your marriage dies, except it's slower and way more painful, and there's a jazz band providing an unnecessarily dramatic soundtrack. I could see it all now, crystal clear, like someone had finally turned on the lights in a room I'd been stumbling through in the dark for 5 years. Every red flag I'd ignored, every warning sign I'd convinced myself was just a misunderstanding, every moment where my gut told me something was off, and I'd told my gut to shut up, because love conquers all, right? Wrong. So spectacularly, devastatingly wrong. I remembered the first time one of my buddies tried to warn me. It was about 6 months after Claire and I had gotten serious, maybe a year before we got married. My friend Jake and I were grabbing beers at our usual spot, this dive bar near my apartment that served wings so good they could make you forget your problems for at least 20 minutes. I'd been going on and on about Claire, how smart she was, how driven, how she was going to be this amazing lawyer someday, and we were going to have this incredible life together. Jake had listened patiently, nodding and making the appropriate supportive sounds, until he finally put his beer down and looked at me with this expression that I now recognize as concern mixed with my friend is about to make a huge mistake, and I have to at least try to stop him. Bro, he'd said, choosing his words carefully. I'm happy you're happy. Really I am. But doesn't it bother you that you're paying for everything? Like everything? Her rent, her tuition, her groceries, her car insurance. I mean, when does she start contributing? I'd bristled immediately, gotten defensive the way you do when someone points out a truth you're not ready to hear. She's in law school, man. She's focused on studying. She doesn't have time for a job. This is temporary. Once she graduates, once she passes the bar, things will balance out. We're investing in our future. Jake had given me this look, this sad, knowing look that said he'd heard this story before and knew exactly how it ended. Your future, or her future? Same thing, I'd said confidently, like I actually believed it. We're a team. He'd opened his mouth to say something else, then closed it, shaken his head. Taken another drink. All right, man. I hope you're right. I really do. But he wasn't the only one. Oh no. I had a whole chorus of people trying to tell me the truth that I was too stubborn, or too in love, or too stupid to see. My sister Rachel had pulled me aside at Thanksgiving during Claire's second year of law school. We'd been in the kitchen, me washing dishes while everyone else watched football in the living room, and Rachel had been drying plates with this concerned expression that made her look way too much like our mom. Marcus, she'd said quietly, glancing toward the living room where Claire was chatting with our cousins. Can I ask you something? And please don't get mad. Sure, I'd said, scrubbing at a particularly stubborn piece of cranberry sauce. Are you happy? Like really happy? The question had caught me off guard. Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that? Rachel had set down the plate she was drying and turned to face me directly. Because you look exhausted. Because you're working yourself to death. Because every time we talk, you're stressed about money or tired from pulling double shifts. And meanwhile, Claire is. I don't know. She just seems like she's living her best life while you're drowning. She's in law school, I'd said, and I realized I was using the same defensive tone I'd used with Jake. It's hard. She's under a lot of pressure. And you're not. Rachel had challenged. Marcus, you're working 3 jobs. 3. When was the last time you did something for yourself? When was the last time she did something for you? I'd thought about it, standing there with my hands in dishwater, and couldn't come up with a good answer. We're building something together, I'd finally said, knowing it sounded weak even as I said it. Rachel had sighed. Okay, but just promise me you'll think about whether she's actually building it with you, or if she's just letting you build it for her while she takes all the credit. I'd promised, but I hadn't thought about it. Not really. Because thinking about it would have meant admitting that maybe, just maybe, everyone who loved me could see something I couldn't. Then there was my coworker Lisa from the IT firm, who'd been the most blunt about it. We'd been grabbing lunch one day, sitting in the break room eating sad desk salads, and I'd mentioned something about picking up an extra Uber shift that weekend to cover Claire's bar prep course fees. Lisa had put down her fork and looked at me like I'd just told her I was planning to swim with sharks while covered in bacon. Dude, stop. Stop what? Stop funding this woman's entire existence. She's using you. Like, textbook using you. You know that, right? I'd laughed it off. Actually laughed. She's not using me. We're married. That's what you do. You support each other. Except she's not supporting you, Lisa had pointed out. When was the last time she paid for anything? When was the last time she worked? When was the last time she even acknowledged everything you're doing? She says thank you. I'd protested weakly. Saying thank you and actually being grateful are 2 very different things, Lisa had said. Mark my words, the second she doesn't need you anymore, she's gone. I've seen this before. Hell, my ex-husband did the same thing to me. Used me to get through medical school and then dumped me for a nurse the month after he started his residency. Claire's not like that, I'd insisted. Lisa had just shrugged. I hope you're right. But maybe keep some screenshots of all those tuition payments, just in case. At the time, I thought she was being cynical. Bitter. projecting her own failed marriage onto my perfectly fine one. Now I wished I'd listened. Now I wished I'd kept better records, taken her advice, protected myself. But the worst memory, the one that really stung as I stood there at the bar ordering my drink, was from about 6 months ago. Claire had just finished her final exams, was waiting for bar results, and I'd suggested we take a weekend trip. Nothing fancy, just a little bed and breakfast upstate, a chance to relax together and celebrate her being done with school. She'd looked at me like I'd suggested we vacation in a dumpster. "I can't afford that right now, Marcus." "I'll pay for it," I'd said, because of course I would. I always did. "That's not the point," she'd snapped. "I need to focus on networking, on making connections for jobs. I don't have time for some romantic getaway." "We haven't had a real vacation in 5 years," I'd pointed out. "Don't you think we've earned it? Don't you think we deserve a break?" "You mean I've earned it," she'd corrected. "I'm the one who just finished law school. You've just been working. Just been working. Like those 3 jobs were nothing. Like every sacrifice I'd made was just background noise in her success story." I let it go. Convinced myself she was stressed, that she didn't mean it the way it sounded. Told myself that once things settled down, once she had a job and felt more secure, she'd go back to being the woman I'd fallen in love with. But here's the thing about rose-colored glasses. When you're wearing them, all the red flags just look like flags. As the laughter from that table behind me faded into the general party noise, as I leaned against the bar and waited for the bartender to notice me, I finally let myself see it all clearly. Every warning I'd ignored, every excuse I'd made for her, every time I'd chosen to believe her promises over the evidence right in front of my face. My friends had warned me, "Bro, she's using you." And I'd said, "Nah, she's just ambitious." My sister had warned me, "She's not building anything with you." And I'd said, "You don't understand our relationship." My coworker had warned me, "The second she doesn't need you, she's gone." And I'd said, "Claire's not like that." Turns out ambition looks a lot like betrayal when you're wearing a cap and gown and surrounded by people who don't know what you sacrificed to get there. Turns out, using someone and building a partnership can look identical until the person getting used finally opens their eyes. Turns out everyone else could see what I couldn't, or wouldn't. I'd studied patience while Claire studied law. 5 years of advanced coursework in biting my tongue, swallowing my pride, and convincing myself that love meant putting someone else's dreams ahead of my own happiness. And you know what? I got my PhD in it. Graduated top of my class in the school of being a doormat. The bartender finally made his way over, and I must have looked like hell because he took one look at my face and said, "Rough night?" "You could say that," I replied. My wife just called me a lowlife at her graduation party. The party I basically paid for. He winced. "Ouch. What are you drinking?" "Something strong enough to make me forget the last 5 years, but not so strong I can't enjoy what's about to happen next." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. "Smart man. One old-fashioned, coming up." "Make it heavy on the irony," I said. So instead of doing what any normal person would do, which would be storming out, making a scene, maybe throwing a drink, definitely crying in my car, I did something that probably looked insane to anyone watching. I stayed. I ordered a drink. I leaned against that bar like I had all the time in the world and nothing better to do than enjoy the ambience of my own public humiliation. One old-fashioned, I told the bartender, and I swear to God, this came out of my mouth without even thinking, heavy on the irony. He gave me this look, half sympathy, half amusement, and started mixing the drink. I could feel eyes on me from all over the room. The story was already spreading through the party like wildfire. "That guy over there? Yeah, that's Claire's husband. She just called him a lowlife. Can you believe it? Did you hear what he said back? This is better than the drama on Suits." From my vantage point at the bar, I had a perfect view of Claire's table. She'd sat back down, and her friends had immediately swarmed her with that particular brand of fake concern that women deploy when they smell gossip. Tara was leaning in close, probably asking if she was okay, while simultaneously filing away every detail to share with the group chat later. Pinstripe suit guy had his arm around some blonde woman, both of them shooting glances in my direction and whispering. A couple of the older professors had wandered off, probably uncomfortable with the amount of personal drama unfolding at what was supposed to be a professional celebration. But Claire? Oh, Claire was in her element now. She was doing damage control, working the table like a politician after a scandal. I could see her laughing, touching people's arms, leaning in to say things that made them laugh and nod. She was spinning the narrative in real time, probably painting me as the crazy, jealous husband who couldn't handle her success. The bitter spouse who showed up to ruin her big moment. Poor Claire, stuck with such an unsupportive partner. Thank God she's finally free to thrive without dead weight holding her back. And you know what? A month ago, hell, maybe even an hour ago, that would have worked. I would have felt guilty. I would have wondered if maybe I was being unreasonable, if maybe I was letting my insecurities get the best of me, if maybe I should apologize for embarrassing her at her own party. But right now, watching her perform for her audience, I felt nothing but clarity. Crystal clear, high definition, 4K clarity. The bartender slid my drink across the bar. On the house, he said quietly. I heard what happened. You okay, man? Getting there, I said, taking a sip. It was perfect, smooth, strong, with just enough sweetness to take the edge off. Thanks. He nodded and moved down the bar to help another customer, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my drink and the beginnings of a plan that was forming in my head like a storm cloud gathering on the horizon. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from my buddy Chris, who I'd mentioned the party to earlier in the week. He probably expected me to be sending him happy photos of my successful wife, maybe a selfie of us together looking like a power couple. The text read, "Heard she called you a lowlife. You okay, man?" I stared at that message for a second. Word traveled fast. Someone must have already texted him, or maybe posted about it on social media. Great. Just great. My humiliation was probably already going viral in our friend circle. I typed back, "Give me 10 minutes. Gonna redefine the word low." His response was immediate. "What are you gonna do?" I looked at that question for a long moment, my finger hovering over the keyboard. What was I going to do? Walk away? Let her win? Let her tell everyone that I was just the bitter ex-husband who couldn't handle her success? Let her rewrite our entire history, erasing 5 years of sacrifice and support so she could be the self-made success story she'd always wanted to be? No. Hell no. I didn't type anything back to Chris. Instead, I took another sip of my old-fashioned and let my mind work through the situation with the kind of cold, calculated precision I usually reserved for debugging code or solving complex IT problems. Here's the thing that nobody at that rooftop party knew. The thing that Claire had conveniently forgotten in her rush to distance herself from her low-life husband. I wasn't just some random IT guy who fixed computers and drove for Uber. That was the side hustle, the survival job, the thing I did to pay the bills while Claire chased her dreams. My actual career, the thing I'd built before I met Claire and had put on hold to support her. I owned a tech company. Small, yeah, but specialized and very, very good at what we did. We built digital compliance software, the kind of behind-the-scenes systems that nobody thinks about until they need them. Boring stuff. Databases, security protocols, verification systems. The kind of technology that major institutions relied on to keep their operations running smoothly and legally. And one of our biggest clients? The State Law Board Committee. You know, the organization responsible for licensing lawyers. The people who decided whether someone could practice law or not. The gatekeepers of the entire legal profession in this state. We'd landed that contract about 2 years ago, right around the time Claire was in her second year of law school. I'd actually told her about it, excited about the big client, about how it might mean more stable income, about how things were looking up for my company. She'd barely listened, too focused on studying for her civil procedure exam. Ironic, considering civil procedure was all about following the rules, and she was about to learn a very hard lesson about what happens when you don't. My company handled their database. We managed their applicant tracking system. We maintained their digital records. We built the software that verified financial disclosures, checked for conflicts of interest, and flagged any inconsistencies in applications. And I had access to all of it. Not illegal access. This wasn't some hacking situation. I had legitimate, authorized, administrative access as the owner of the company that maintained their systems. I could look up any applicant, review any file, check any detail. It was part of my job to ensure data integrity, to catch errors, to make sure everything was running smoothly. I pulled out my phone again and opened my email app, scrolling through until I found the folder labeled State Bar Admin. There it was, my login credentials for the administrative portal. I checked the system just last week, running a routine security audit. My fingers hovered over the screen. This was the moment. The fork in the road. I could finish my drink, walk out of this party, file for divorce, and move on with my life. Take the high road. Be the bigger person. Let karma handle Claire in its own time. Or I could take that low road. The one Claire had just accused me of being on anyway. If I was already a lowlife in her eyes, in front of all her friends and colleagues, then what exactly did I have to lose? I thought about 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of 3 jobs. 5 years of instant ramen while she ate sushi. 5 years of ironing her blazers and proofreading her papers and listening to her complain about professors and classmates and the stress of it all. 5 years of just wait until I graduate, and we'll celebrate later, and you're so supportive, babe. 5 years of being a doormat with a credit card and a stupid, stubborn belief in potential. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Chris. Dude, whatever you're planning, just think it through first. I smiled. Good old Chris. Always the voice of reason. Always the guy who told you to sleep on it, to cool down, to not make any rash decisions you'd regret. But here's the thing about regret. I'd spent 5 years regretting things I didn't do. Regretting that I didn't stand up for myself more. Regretting that I didn't push back when Claire started treating me like an ATM instead of a partner. Regretting that I didn't listen to Jake, to Rachel, to Lisa, to everyone who tried to warn me. I was done with that kind of regret. I pulled up my contacts and scrolled down to a number I hadn't called in a while. It was labeled Board Executive Line, a direct connection to the administrative office that handled bar applications and licensing issues. I'd gotten the number when we first set up their system, told to call if there were ever any technical emergencies or data integrity concerns. Well, this was definitely a data integrity concern. I looked back over at Claire's table one more time. She was posing for photos now, smiling that brilliant smile, holding her diploma, surrounded by congratulatory people who thought they were witnessing the beginning of a great legal career. The jazz band had started playing something upbeat. I think it was Feeling Good. How appropriate. I hit the call button. The phone rang once, twice. On the third ring, someone picked up. State Bar Administration, this is Director Morrison. Evening, Director. I said, my voice completely calm, completely professional. This is Marcus Hale from Hale Tech Solutions. I'm calling about a discrepancy I've noticed in one of your new applicant profiles. I think we need to flag it for review. At this hour? He sounded surprised, but not annoyed. We had a good working relationship. My company had saved their asses more than once with our reliable systems. I know, I apologize for the timing, I said. But given the sensitivity of bar admissions, I thought it was better to report it immediately rather than wait until Monday. I appreciate that. What's the issue? I took a sip of my drink. The irony tasted delicious. It's regarding applicant Claire Richardson. ID number 4276B. There's a conflict of interest issue with her financial declaration. The system flagged some inconsistencies regarding undisclosed support payments during her academic term. There was a pause. I could hear keyboard clicking on the other end. I'm pulling up her file now, Morrison said. What kind of support payments? Substantial ones, I said. Tuition, housing, living expenses. All provided by a spouse, but not properly disclosed in the financial aid sections or the character and fitness portions of her application. It raises questions about financial transparency and full disclosure, which, as you know, are pretty crucial for bar admission. More keyboard clicking. A longer pause. Mr. Hale, Morrison said slowly, are you saying there's evidence of misrepresentation on this application? I'm saying there's a discrepancy that needs investigation, I replied. That's all. I'm just the tech guy flagging what the system caught. What you do with that information is entirely up to your office. We'll need to put her admission on hold pending review, he said. This is serious. We'll have to contact her immediately. I checked my watch. How immediately are we talking? Within the hour. We take these matters very seriously. Of course, I said. That's why I called. Just doing my job, making sure everything's above board. We appreciate the vigilance, Morrison said. I'll escalate this to the review committee tonight. Happy to help, I said, and ended the call. I set my phone down on the bar and picked up my drink. The jazz band was still playing Feeling Good, and honestly, I was starting to feel pretty good myself. I stepped outside onto the rooftop terrace after making that call, needing some air and also wanting to position myself where I could watch the entrance. The night air was cool against my face, a welcome relief from the stuffy atmosphere inside, where everybody was too busy networking and social climbing to notice they were suffocating. The city lights flickered below us like they were in on the joke, like they knew something spectacular was about to go down and they had front row seats. I leaned against the railing, phone still in my hand, and let myself have a moment. Just a moment to process what I'd just done. There was no going back now. I'd pulled the trigger, made the call, set things in motion that couldn't be undone. In about 30 minutes, maybe less, someone from the State Bar was going to walk through those doors and Claire's entire world was going to implode. Part of me, the part that had loved her once, that had believed in us, that had spent 5 years trying to build something, felt a twinge of guilt. Just a twinge. Like a phantom pain from something that used to be there, but wasn't anymore. The rest of me? The rest of me felt like I'd just exhaled after holding my breath for 5 years straight. My phone buzzed. Chris again. You're being really quiet, and that's making me nervous. I typed back, just enjoying the view. Party's about to get interesting. Marcus, what did you do? Nothing illegal. Nothing immoral. Just made sure the right people knew the truth. Oh shit. Yeah. I pocketed my phone and checked my watch. 23 minutes since I'd made the call. Morrison had said within the hour, but knowing how seriously the bar took integrity violations, I figured they'd move fast. Especially on a Saturday night when they could catch the person at their graduation party, surrounded by witnesses. Maximum impact, maximum accountability. The irony wasn't lost on me that Claire had studied law for 5 years and somehow missed the part about full disclosure being kind of a big deal. Through the glass doors, I could see the party continuing inside. The jazz band had moved on from feeling good. Shame, I was really vibing with that one. And we're now playing something smooth and forgettable. Claire was still holding court at her table, probably 3 glasses of champagne deep by now, laughing with her law school friends about whatever lawyers in training laugh about. Billable hours? Loopholes? The crushing weight of student debt they didn't actually have to pay themselves? Tara was practically glued to her side, playing the role of best friend and social media manager, taking photos for Instagram that would probably be captioned something like, "She did it." So proud of this queen. Hashtag law school grad, hashtag future esquire, hashtag self-made. That last hashtag was going to age like milk in the sun. I saw a movement at the entrance, the kind of movement that makes everyone's heads turn instinctively. A man in a gray suit had walked in, and he had that unmistakable air of authority that comes from years of bureaucratic power. He wasn't dressed for a party. He was dressed for business. Serious business. He stopped at the host's stand, flashed some kind of credentials to the hostess, and said something that made her eyes go wide. She pointed toward Claire's table. Oh, this was happening. This was really happening. I walked back inside casually, drink in hand, positioning myself at the bar where I had a perfect view, but wasn't obviously watching. The bartender caught my eye and raised an eyebrow. I gave him a small nod that said, "Watch this." The man in the gray suit made his way through the crowd with purpose. People stepped aside for him automatically, the way you do when someone's body language screams, "Official business, move." The jazz band hit a particularly awkward note. I was starting to think they were psychically connected to the drama in the room, and a few people near Claire's table noticed the approaching figure. Conversations started to die down. That thing happened where the silence spreads through a room like ripples on water. First, the tables closest to the entrance went quiet, then the next ring of tables, then the one after that, until finally the vacuum of sound reached Claire's table. She was mid-laugh when she noticed everyone staring at something behind her. She turned around, still smiling, probably expecting another well-wisher or maybe a professor coming to offer congratulations. Instead, she found herself face-to-face with a man holding official-looking credentials and an expression that could have frozen hell over. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying across the now silent room because apparently God wanted to make sure everyone heard this. "Are you Claire Richardson?" Claire's smile faltered but didn't quite die. "Yes? Can I help you?" The jazz band had stopped playing entirely now. Even they knew this was a moment that required complete silence. The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a document. Not a warrant or anything that dramatic, but an official letter with the State Bar letterhead visible even from where I was standing. "Ms. Richardson, I'm Deputy Director James Morrison from the State Bar Administration. I need to speak with you regarding your bar admission application." You could have heard a champagne bubble pop in that silence. Claire's face went from confused to concerned in about half a second. What? My application was approved. I got my admission letter 3 days ago. Yes, Morrison said, his tone completely professional, completely neutral, completely devastating. However, we've received information that requires immediate review. Your bar admission has been placed on administrative hold, effective immediately, pending investigation. The word immediately seemed to echo in the silent room, even though he'd only said it once. I watched Claire's face drain of color faster than my bank account had drained over the past 5 years. It was fascinating, really, watching someone process the worst news of their life in real time while surrounded by everyone they wanted to impress. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish trying to understand why the water had suddenly disappeared. What? The word came out strangled, barely audible. What do you mean? I don't understand. Morrison held out the document. Claire took it with shaking hands, and I saw Tara lean in to read over her shoulder, along with half the people at the table. Everyone else in the room was craning their necks, trying to figure out what was happening. Your financial disclosures are under review, Morrison continued, and I had to hand it to him. He maintained perfect professional composure while dropping a bomb that was nuking this woman's entire career before it started. The board has received information regarding undisclosed support payments during your academic term. Specifically, substantial financial support from your spouse that wasn't properly disclosed in your application. Every head in that room turned toward me simultaneously. It was like a choreographed dance move, this unified swivel of about 50 people all looking at the guy leaning against the bar with an old-fashioned in his hand. Claire's eyes found mine across the room, and I saw the exact moment she realized what had happened. The exact moment she understood who had made that call, who had provided that information, who had just systematically dismantled everything she'd worked for. Well, everything we'd worked for. But semantics. I raised my glass to her. Just a small gesture. A little salute. The kind of thing you do when you want to say cheers without actually saying anything at all. Her face transformed from shock to pure fury so fast, it was almost impressive. You, she hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. You didn't. Oh, I did. I said cheerfully, projecting my voice across the room, because if we were doing this, we were doing it right. Guess the lowlife finally took a picture. Just not the one you expected. More of a screenshot, really, of 5 years of financial records. Someone gasped. I think it was Tara, but it could have been any of the dozen people whose mouths were hanging open. Morrison cleared his throat, reclaiming control of the situation. Ms. Richardson, I understand this is difficult timing, but the board takes disclosure violations very seriously. Failing to properly report financial support during your academic term raises significant concerns about character and fitness, which, as you know, are essential requirements for bar admission. This is insane, Claire said, her voice rising. She looked around at her friends, her professors, her future colleagues, all of them watching her unraveling in real time. He's doing this because you called me a lowlife? I offered helpfully. Yeah, that didn't help. But mostly I'm doing this because you committed fraud on your bar application. The personal vendetta is just a nice bonus. It's not fraud, she shouted, and I saw Morrison's eyebrows raise slightly. Shouting at bar officials probably wasn't the best strategy, but I wasn't about to interrupt her self-destruction. You declared yourself as financially independent, I said, still calm, still casual, like we were discussing the weather. You claimed minimal support. You failed to disclose that your spouse paid your tuition, your rent, your car payments, your insurance, your groceries, your bar prep course, and pretty much everything else for 5 years. That's called material misrepresentation, sweetheart. You should know that. You studied law. Morrison nodded slightly, confirming my assessment. The board will conduct a full investigation. You'll have an opportunity to respond to these allegations and provide documentation. However, until this matter is resolved, your license to practice law in this state is suspended. Suspended. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. The law firm representatives who'd been schmoozing with Claire earlier, the ones who'd probably offered her a job, who'd been talking about partnership tracks and corner offices, suddenly found reasons to be somewhere else. They started backing away like she was radioactive, pulling out their phones, probably texting their HR departments about rescinding offers. The dean of the law school, who'd been proudly posing for photos with his star graduate 30 minutes ago, cleared his throat awkwardly and headed for the exit faster than my self-respect had left on the night I realized my marriage was over. Her classmates just stared, some in shock, some in poorly concealed schadenfreude. Because let's be real, nobody makes it through law school without making a few enemies, and Claire had definitely made her share with that self-made attitude. I finished the rest of my drink in one long sip. The old-fashioned was perfectly balanced, sweet, bitter, strong, smooth. Kind of like revenge, actually. You know what's funny? Well, not funny haha, more like funny in that dark, cosmic justice kind of way. Claire's face drained of color faster than my bank account had over the past 5 years. And trust me, my bank account had drained pretty damn fast. We're talking emergency level, red alert. Sir, your card has been declined, levels of fast. But watching her standing there, holding that official letter with shaking hands, her perfect graduation party crumbling around her like a sandcastle at high tide, that was a speed I'd never seen before. It was like watching someone age 10 years in 10 seconds. The board has both the authority and the obligation to place admissions on hold pending investigation. The words character and fitness landed like a slap. I saw several of her classmates exchange glances. In the legal world, those words were basically code for, we think you might be a lying liar who lies. Character and fitness reviews were what happened when the bar thought you'd done something shady. It was the investigation they launched when they suspected you weren't trustworthy enough to be a lawyer, which, given that lawyers aren't exactly known for their overwhelming trustworthiness, was saying something. But I didn't. I mean, the support payments. Claire's voice was getting higher, more desperate. She looked around at the crowd of people watching her, and I could see the panic setting in. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be her night, her triumph, her moment to shine and show everyone that she'd made it. Morrison held up a hand, cutting her off with a gesture that was somehow both polite and absolutely final. Ms. Richardson, I strongly advise you to consult with an attorney before making any statements. Anything you say right now could impact the board's investigation. The irony of needing to hire a lawyer when you just spent 5 years becoming one wasn't lost on anyone in that room. A few people, the ones with less social awareness or more schadenfreude, actually snickered. Someone tried to cover it with a cough, but we all heard it. Claire's eyes found mine again across the room, and if looks could kill, I'd be dead about 17 times over. The fury in her expression was almost beautiful in its purity. This wasn't just anger. This was the rage of someone who'd been caught, who knew exactly who'd caught them, and who was realizing in real time that there wasn't a damn thing they could do about it. You ruined me, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. Several people gasped at the outburst. Morrison took a subtle step back, probably trained to recognize when someone was about to completely lose it. I set my empty glass down on the bar with a soft clink that somehow carried across the silent room. When I spoke, my voice was calm, conversational, like we were discussing what to have for dinner, not the systematic destruction of her legal career. No, sweetheart, I said. I didn't ruin you. You ruined you. I just made sure the right people knew about it. There's a difference. It's subtle, but it's there. You probably would have learned about it in legal ethics if you'd paid more attention instead of assuming the rules didn't apply to you. Her hands balled into fists, crumpling the letter from the bar. You're doing this because I called you a lowlife. This is revenge. This is consequences. I interrupted, and my voice got a little harder. This is what happens when you commit fraud on official documents. This is what happens when you claim to be self-made while someone else is literally making you. This is what happens when you forget that the boring, reliable guy you married isn't actually stupid. He's just patient. And honey, my patience ran out about the same time you decided to humiliate me in front of 50 people. The officer, Morrison, cleared his throat again, clearly uncomfortable with the marital drama unfolding in front of him, but also probably fascinated because this was way better than whatever he'd planned to do on a Saturday night. Ms. Richardson, you'll receive formal notification within 24 hours outlining the specific allegations and the investigation process. You'll have an opportunity to respond in writing and provide any documentation that might be relevant. Claire wasn't listening to him anymore. She was staring at me with this expression that I'd never seen before. It was like she was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. Not as the convenient ATM, not as the supportive background character in her success story, not as the boring but reliable husband who'd always be there to clean up her messes and fund her dreams. She was seeing me as someone who could fight back, someone who had power, someone who'd just proven that underestimating people has consequences. And she was terrified. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered. And for just a second, she sounded like the woman I'd married. Vulnerable, human, almost sympathetic. Almost. "How could I?" I repeated, and I laughed. Actually laughed. "Claire, I worked 3 jobs for 5 years so you could go to law school. I paid every bill, every tuition payment, every bar prep fee. I ironed your blazers at 3 in the morning because you had early court simulations. I proofread your papers. I made you dinner when you were too stressed to function. I held you when you cried about exams. I believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself." I took a step closer, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. "And tonight, at your graduation party, when I showed up with flowers and pride and the naive hope that maybe you'd want to take one picture with the man who made all of this possible, you called me a lowlife. In front of everyone. You looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't worth being photographed with." The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Even the bartender had stopped moving. "So yeah," I continued, "I made a phone call. I told the truth. I made sure the people who needed to know about your financial situation actually knew about it. Because here's the thing about being a lawyer, Claire, it requires honesty. It requires integrity. It requires admitting when someone helped you instead of pretending you did it all yourself." Morrison was nodding slightly, and I could see a few of her former classmates looking at her with new understanding. The story was rewriting itself in real time. An hour ago, she was the self-made success story. Now she was the woman who'd committed fraud to hide the fact that her husband had funded her entire education. Tara, who'd been frozen in shock this whole time, finally found her voice. "Claire, is this true? Did Marcus really pay for everything?" Claire's jaw clenched. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Another classmate, some guy I vaguely recognized from a study group that had met at our apartment, the apartment I paid for, spoke up. "Wait, so when you told us you were working your way through school?" "I was studying." Claire snapped. "That was my work. That was my contribution. Just because I wasn't physically working some meaningless job doesn't mean I wasn't working." Oh, this was getting good. "So let me get this straight," I said, and I couldn't keep the amusement out of my voice. "You consider studying to be equivalent to me working 3 actual jobs? That's interesting math. Let's break it down for everyone here, shall we?" Morrison looked like he wanted to stop this, but honestly, he was probably too fascinated to intervene. Plus, everything I was saying was just providing more evidence for his investigation. "I worked 40 hours a week at an IT firm." I continued, counting on my fingers. "Another 25 hours bartending. Another 15 to 20 driving for Uber. That's roughly 80 to 85 hours of actual, paid employment per week." Claire studied. "What would you say, honey? 40 hours? 50 on a busy week? And somehow, in your mind, that makes us equal partners." A few people were pulling out their phones now, probably doing the math themselves, or maybe recording this for posterity. This was the kind of drama that would be talked about in legal circles for years. The graduation party that turned into a public trial. "You're humiliating me," Claire said, and now there were actual tears forming in her eyes. The makeup she'd so carefully applied was starting to run. "No," I said firmly. "You humiliated yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows why." The law firm representatives who'd been courting her earlier? Gone. Vanished like smoke. The professors who'd been singing her praises? Heading for the exits with sudden urgent phone calls to make. Even some of her friends were starting to edge away, distancing themselves from the disaster. I looked around the room at all the faces staring at us, some shocked, some entertained, some deeply uncomfortable. This was going to be legendary. This was going to be the story people told at legal conferences. Remember that woman who got her bar admission suspended at her own graduation party? By her husband? The one she called a lowlife? I walked past Claire, past Morrison, past the wreckage of her perfect evening. As I headed for the door, I had one more thing to say. "Oh, and Claire." I turned back to look at her one last time. "I'll send everyone the bill for the champagne. Since apparently you're financially independent now, you can handle it." Someone actually clapped. I'm not kidding. Someone in that room of lawyers and law students and legal professionals actually started clapping. Then someone else joined in. And then a few more people. It wasn't everyone. It wasn't even most people. But it was enough to make Claire's face turn from white to red, from shock to mortification. I walked out of that rooftop party while the lowlife she'd mocked became the legend they'd be whispering about for years. The thing about making a legendary exit is that you can't look back. You can't hesitate, can't second-guess yourself, can't let anyone see even a flicker of doubt. You commit to the moment with everything you've got, and you walk out those doors like you're the main character in a movie about justified revenge and personal redemption. And right then, in that moment, I was absolutely the main character. I strode toward the exit with my head high and my conscience surprisingly clear. The scattered applause was still happening behind me. Not a standing ovation, but enough to make the point. Someone wolf whistled. Someone else called out, "You tell her, man," and I heard what sounded like Tara urgently shushing them. As I passed tables of stunned lawyers-to-be, I caught snippets of whispered conversations that were already starting. The narrative was being written in real time, and for once, I was actually in it instead of being edited out. "Did you hear what he said about working 3 jobs? She told us she put herself through school. I can't believe she actually said that to him. Is someone recording this? Oh my God, this is going on TikTok for sure." The law firm representatives, the sharks in expensive suits who'd been circling Claire like she was chum in the water, had huddled together near the bar. I caught one of them on his phone, clearly already doing damage control. "Yeah, I'm going to need you to pull that offer letter we sent to Richardson. Yes, tonight. I don't care if it's Saturday. Janet, we've got a situation." A situation. That's what 5 years of my life had been reduced to. A situation that needed managing. The dean of the law school, Professor something or other with the impressive credentials and the reputation for being tough but fair, was speed-walking toward the exit like his tenure depended on getting out before things got worse. He'd been so proud earlier, posing with his star student, probably already planning how to use her success story in recruitment materials. Now he looked like a man who'd just realized his prize horse was actually a donkey in disguise. I reached the doors and pushed them open, stepping out into the hallway that led to the elevators. The cool air from the building's AC hit my face, and I realized I was grinning. Actually grinning like an idiot. When was the last time I'd smiled, really smiled, without forcing it? When was the last time I'd felt something other than tired, stressed, or vaguely disappointed? The elevator dinged, and the door slid open. I stepped inside and hit the button for the ground floor. As the doors started to close, I caught one last glimpse of the party through the glass walls of the venue. Claire was still standing there, surrounded by people, but looking completely alone, holding that letter from the bar like it was a death sentence. Morrison was talking to her, probably giving her more official instructions that she wasn't hearing because she was too busy processing the fact that her entire future had just been suspended. The doors closed, and I was alone in the elevator with my reflection in the polished metal walls. I looked at myself. Navy blazer, slightly rumpled from leaning against the bar. No flowers anymore, because I'd left them on her table like a funeral arrangement for our marriage. I looked tired. I looked older than 38. But I also looked satisfied in a way I hadn't felt in years. My phone buzzed. Multiple times. Like aggressive buzzing that suggested my entire contact list had suddenly decided I was the most interesting person they knew. "Chris, dude. What did you do?" "Jake. Yo, Sarah just texted me about what happened. You're a legend." "Rachel. Marcus, call me. Now. I need details." "Lisa from work. I told you. I told you she was using you." "I'm sorry, but also I told you." And then, the one that made me laugh out loud in the empty elevator. "Unknown number. This is going viral. Someone posted the video. You're trending on Twitter. Hashtag #LowLifeLawLesson." I clicked on the link they'd sent, and sure enough, there it was. Someone, probably multiple someones, had recorded the whole thing and posted it online. The video started right at the moment Morrison walked up to Claire's table and ended with me walking out to scattered applause. The caption read, "Law school grad calls husband a lowlife at her party. Husband works for State Bar and gets her license suspended on the spot. The revenge is immaculate. Fire." It already had over 50,000 views, and I'd only been in the elevator for 2 minutes. The comments were exactly what you'd expect from the internet. A mix of support, schadenfreude, legal analysis, and people arguing about whether what I did was justified or petty. This is the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. He worked 3 jobs to put her through school, and she called him a lowlife? Actually, if she misrepresented her financial situation on her bar application, that is a legitimate ethics violation. He might have saved the legal profession from someone who lies on official documents. Petty king energy. I'm here for it. My man really said, let me just ruin your entire career real quick, skull. The fact that he stayed calm the whole time makes it even better. Someone get this man a medal and a better wife. The elevator reached the ground floor and the doors opened. I stepped out into the lobby and my phone immediately rang. It was Chris. Are you okay? He asked the second I answered. I'm great, I said, and I meant it. I'm actually great. Marcus, you just nuked your wife's career on her graduation night. That's pretty intense, man. She nuked it herself when she lied on her application. I corrected. I just made sure someone noticed. There's a difference. Okay, but he paused. Are you sure you're not going to regret this tomorrow? When the adrenaline wears off and you realize what you've done. I thought about that as I pushed through the building's revolving doors and stepped out onto the street. The night air was cool and clear, and the city lights were doing their thing. And somewhere behind me in that rooftop venue, Claire was probably still trying to explain her way out of something that couldn't be explained away. You know what I regret? I said into the phone. I regret the 5 years I spent believing that supporting someone meant letting them walk all over me. I regret every time I made excuses for her behavior. I regret not listening to you, to Jake, to Rachel, to Lisa, to everyone who tried to warn me. I regret ironing blazers at 3 in the morning for someone who'd eventually tell me I wasn't worth taking a picture with. I started walking down the street, no particular destination in mind, just wanting to move, to feel like I was going somewhere instead of being stuck in place. But do I regret making one phone call to report legitimate fraud on a bar application? Do I regret making sure she faces consequences for lying about her financial situation? Do I regret standing up for myself for once in 5 years? I laughed. Not even a little bit, man. Not even a little bit. Chris was quiet for a moment. Then, okay, I hear you. You need anything? Want to grab a beer? You probably shouldn't be alone right now. Actually, I said, I think alone is exactly what I need to be. I've spent 5 years not being alone, not having space to think, always being available for whatever Claire needed. I think I've earned a night to myself. All right, but call me if you change your mind. And Marcus? Yeah, that was the most epic thing I've ever witnessed secondhand. I mean, it was brutal, but it was also kind of beautiful in a weird, justice-served kind of way. I smiled. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I hung up and kept walking, phone still buzzing with texts and notifications. The video was up to 200,000 views now. Someone had made a TikTok set to Before He Cheats, except the lyrics were changed to Before She Graduates. Another person had created a whole thread analyzing the legal implications of what Claire had done and why I was technically right to report it. I was trending. Me, Marcus Hale. Boring, reliable, 3 jobs working Marcus Hale was trending on social media because I'd finally stood up for myself. A notification popped up. Claire was calling. I looked at her name on the screen, watched it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I did something that felt almost as good as walking out of that party. I declined the call and blocked her number. My phone immediately rang again, her mother this time. Mrs. Richardson, who'd always treated me like I was lucky to be married to her daughter, who'd never once thanked me for supporting Claire through school, who'd probably been at that party watching the whole thing unfold. I blocked her too. Then Claire's father. Blocked. Tara. Blocked. I was on a blocking spree, and it felt amazing. Every number that represented that toxic world I'd been living in got deleted from my life with a single tap. By the time I reached the corner, my phone had finally stopped buzzing quite so aggressively. I found a bench and sat down, just breathing, just existing in a moment that belonged entirely to me. A woman walked by walking her dog, some kind of designer breed that probably cost more than my car, and the dog stopped to sniff my shoes. The woman looked at me, then did a double take. Oh my God, she said. You're the guy from the video. The low-life law lesson guy. I blinked. I've been out of that party for less than 10 minutes. How do you already? She held up her phone. It's everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Reddit. You're like internet famous right now. She paused. That took guts, what you did. My ex-husband did something similar to me. Used me to get through business school, and then traded me in for someone younger the second he got his MBA. I wish I'd had the chance to do what you did. I'm sorry that happened to you, I said, and meant it. Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me, honestly. Got rid of dead weight and found myself again. She smiled. You're going to be okay. Better than okay, probably. Any woman worth having will see what you did and respect the hell out of it. Her dog finished sniffing my shoes, and they walked off, leaving me alone on the bench with that thought. Any woman worth having will respect what you did. I pulled out my phone one more time and opened Twitter. The video was still climbing, 500,000 views now. Someone had edited it with dramatic music. Someone else had made it into a meme format. A bunch of verified accounts were commenting on it. And then I saw it. An article already published on some online legal news site. The headline read, "Man called lowlife at wife's graduation party teaches everyone about legal ethics and karma." I was the story. After 5 years of being edited out, I was finally the story. And you know what? It felt pretty damn good. The next morning, I woke up to my phone absolutely losing its mind. Like nuclear meltdown levels of notifications. I'm talking hundreds of texts, missed calls, voicemails, Instagram DMs from people I hadn't spoken to since high school, Facebook friend requests from strangers, and even a LinkedIn message that just said, "Yo." That was cold-blooded, and I respect it. I made coffee, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion, and honestly, destroying your wife's career at her own party counts as special, and settled in to read through the carnage. Claire's mom was first. How could you humiliate her like that? After everything she's done for you? You're a spiteful, petty man, and I hope you're happy with yourself. After everything she's done for me. That was rich. What exactly had she done for me besides let me work myself half to death while she studied? The audacity was truly breathtaking. Claire had apparently created a new number just to text me. You ruined my life. I hope you're proud of yourself. 5 years together, and this is how you treat me? I can't believe I ever loved you. Her professor, the one who'd speed-walked out of the party, had somehow gotten my number. Mr. Hale, what happened last night was unexpected. The university would appreciate your discretion moving forward. Translation, please stop making us look bad for graduating someone who committed fraud. And then my favorite text of all came from one of her ex-classmates, someone named Derek who I vaguely remembered from study groups. Dude, you're trending on TikTok. The lowlife law lesson. Someone made a remix of the video with that She Belongs to the Streets song. It has 1.2 million views. This is incredible. I clicked the link he sent. Sure enough, there it was. The whole scene, professionally edited with dramatic music, slow-motion effects on Claire's face when Morrison said suspended, and text overlays pointing out the best moments. The comments were absolutely savage. 3 weeks later, I moved into a new apartment overlooking the river. 1 bedroom, hardwood floors, big windows that let in actual sunlight, the kind of place I could have never afforded when I was funding someone else's dreams. It was peaceful, quiet, and 100% drama-free. No blazers to iron, no tuition bills to pay, no passive-aggressive comments about how I wasn't ambitious enough. Claire's bar suspension made headlines in legal circles. Turns out, misrepresenting your financial situation on official documents is exactly the kind of thing that makes licensing boards very, very angry. Her investigation was ongoing, but word on the street, courtesy of Derek, who'd become my unexpected source for law school gossip, was that she'd need to wait at least a year before reapplying, and even then, she'd have to explain the ethics violation to every potential employer forever. She called me one last time, crying, begging for forgiveness. Asked if we could start over, if I'd help her fix this, if maybe I could talk to the board on her behalf. I told her what I should have told her years ago. I don't hold grudges, Claire. I just keep receipts. When she asked if we could reconcile, I smiled into the phone. Sure. Right after you graduate from Humility School. I hear they have a great program. Very intensive. She hung up. These days, I mentor young entrepreneurs at a local business incubator, teaching them about protecting their assets and their hearts. I tell them my story, all of it, and watch them take notes like their lives depend on it. Because sometimes they do. Last week, I went back to that rooftop bar. Same place, different energy. The bartender recognized me immediately and grinned. Another old-fashioned, heavy on the irony. I smiled back. Make it a double. I'm celebrating. Celebrating what? My degree, I said, settling into my seat. PhD in poetic justice. Just graduated.